The early 2000s was a wild time for film adaptations of comic books. Only a decade before, if you pitched a comic book movie to a film studio that didn't have Superman, Batman, or Spider-Man in it, they would have laughed in your face. Fast forward, and now there's a ton of different studios throwing various different comic book properties at the proverbial dartboard. Some of them are hits, others are really big misses, but I think the ones that stuck out to me the most were the oddballs. The comics that no one outside of the immediate comic book reading sphere would really know about. You know, like Daredevil, Ghost Rider, and Blade. But then there was this one director from Guadalajara, Mexico, that put out a comic book film a bit more different than the rest. You see, he did one once before, having directed Blade 2, but this was a bit newer, a bit unusual, a bit more personal. This film would be the first introduction to the works of my favorite director and writer, Guillermo del Toro, as I believe it was the first for many people. And the kicker is, he didn't just make one movie in this franchise, but two. And while I've seen many of his films over the years and all enjoyed them in some capacity, none of them have quite stuck with me the same way as this series of films. Those films being about the demon-turned-detective, the big red guy, Anung Unrama to his enemies, but better known to us all as Hellboy.
Take a little walk to the edge of town and go across the track where the viaduct looms like a bird of doom as it ships and cracks, where secrets lie in the border fires and the humming wires. Yeah, man, you know you're never coming back. Across the square, across the bridge, past the mills, past the stacks. On a gathering storm comes a tall, handsome man in a dusty black coat with a red right hand.
Believe it or not, the Hellboy film duology created by Guillermo del Toro almost never came to pass. The early 2000s, while a bit more liberal thinking than previous decades, still had an issue with a devil-looking creature being the hero of a film. Even more so, studios didn't want to make a film that had the word hell in the title. Fun fact, when I saw this film for the first time, I was around 10 years old, and as a kid, I didn't really like cursing all that much, so I called the film Heckboy. At one point, I think I even clarified it to a friend by calling it H-E double hockey sticks boy, which is hilarious in retrospect. But even though I didn't read the comics when I was younger, I was very much interested in this movie based on the title alone. It seems so mature, so edgy, and yet with the inclusion of the word boy at the end, it seemed a little bit more lighthearted. Even Guillermo del Toro brings this up on the film's first commentary track.
I like the title, and I think Mignola created one of the most beautiful, pulpish, silly titles. Dog Savage, just listen to that, or The Spider, and Hellboy. Is not hell spawn, is not hell being, is not the hell entity, is Hellboy. It's self-diffusing to me.
And that's the thing with Del Toro's work that I really like, especially in his earlier work. He really likes to combine fantastical, whimsical elements with much more serious, grounded questions and themes. In recent years, it seems like he's been focusing more and more on much more serious dramas and films rather than action movies. However, while the Hellboy films are action movies, they still do have that sauce and ask deeper questions. So I'd like to talk about the Hellboy films today, what I like about them, and what deeper themes can be found within them.
Oh well. Let me go in and say hi.
In 1944, on an island off the coast of Scotland, a group of Nazi occultists and scientists, accompanied and assisted by Grigory Rasputin, attempt to open a portal and bring forth eldritch beings from another dimension in order to sway World War II in the Axis' favor. However, Allied troops arrive, dispatch the scientists, cause Rasputin to get sucked silly style, and shut down the whole operation. However, being that the portal was open for a while, a small infant demon-like creature with a large red stony hand manages to come through. Professor Broom, the paranormal specialist who accompanied the troops, takes the baby in, names him Hellboy, and from there the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense is born. 60 years hence, and Hellboy has grown to become the primary agent and detective for the BPRD, raised and looked after by Professor Broom, accompanied by his highly intelligent fishman friend and brother, Abe Sapien, as well as the powerful pyrokinetic agent, Liz Sherman, with whom Hellboy is romantically interested. Fun fact and side note, in the comics, Hellboy is more of an older brother figure to Liz than romantic interest. In fact, Liz and Abe seem to have something going on more in the comics than in the movies. But Del Toro wanted to explore their relationship differently in this film, and I suppose he wanted to save relationships with fishmen for future projects. Also, in this film, we meet John Myers, a new agent to the BPRD, who's put in care of watching after Hellboy, given his compulsive behavior to run off on his own. Well, wouldn't you know it, but Rah-Rah Rasputin is back from the dead, thanks to the assistance of his lover Ilsa and assassin Ruprecht Cronin, and looking to finish what he started those many years ago. But he needs Hellboy's help. So he sends hounds of hell after him, afflicts his friends, and ultimately kills Professor Broom, his father. Thus Hellboy, along with his fellow agents, must fend off Rasputin's agents of destruction, while also figuring out how he fits into all of this. Ultimately, this film is about choice. Hellboy is torn between two things in his life: Rasputin, the man that brought him into the world, and Broom, the man who raised him. Between his destiny and his upbringing, between who he is and who he chooses to be. While Hellboy looks like a demon, he does everything in his power not to appear so. He files down his horns, he wears a big trench coat to hide his tail, he uses a gun even though he's a terrible shot. But all of this is more posturing more than anything. I think an interesting choice that Del Toro made when making the Hellboy films is he decided to make the BPRD a clandestine government agency. In the Hellboy comics, the BPRD is just like every other government agency. Hellboy, Abe, and all of the other agents are agents of the government and just walk freely in public. But the secretive nature of the Bureau presented in this movie adds another layer of shame to Hellboy's character, I think. The idea that his work is exclusively in the shadows and that he has to stay out of the public eye, maybe because he won't be accepted otherwise, something to be explored in the next movie. But, though Hellboy does all this posturing to fit in, we can already tell that he's human. He loves cats, he loves eating candy and drinking, he tries to write love letters, and he wears a rosary like his father did. That's why towards the end of the film, when he's forced to do what Rasputin wants him to do and reopen the portal and bring about Armageddon, Myers doesn't say to him, "Remember what you could be." He says,
"Remember who you are!"
The cross that his father wore now burning his hand, showing that he is changed. But he chooses for himself, cracking off his horns, killing Rasputin, killing the deity that lived within him, confessing his feelings for Liz, and they kiss in a fiery embrace.
You will never fulfill your destiny. You will never understand the power inside you.
I'll just have to find a way to live with that.
It's no wonder why I love this movie. There's a lot to love about it, from the character interactions and relationships to the brawling action scenes in dark parts of New York City, the humor, the character designs, all these amazing things. And for me, Ron Perlman is Hellboy. He did an amazing job, and in makeup no less. Even though studios originally didn't want him to play the character because he was much more popular on television, he did a great job. Doug Jones was great as Abe, Selma Blair was really good as Liz, Rupert Evans was great as Myers, and everyone else. Everything was on point in this movie. And while this film was critically well received, the future of Hellboy would take a turn.
The Golden Army, the harbingers of death, the unstoppable tide. Howdy doody.
In a very 2000s way, the first Hellboy film didn't do too well in theaters, but made back most of its money in home video release. Del Toro began working on a sequel to the first Hellboy film while working on his other film, Pan's Labyrinth. Being that the original studio, Revolution, wanted to focus on its film archive more, Universal ultimately decided to support this new project. And after 4 years, we would finally see the return of the BPRD and Hellboy in a sequel, Hellboy II, The Golden Army. With the new studio, there came a slightly bigger budget, and while Hellboy 2 has much of the same cast and much of the same people working on it, I can say it is much bigger in scale. Being that Mike Mignola was incorporating more fairy tales and mythology into the Hellboy comics at this time, Del Toro felt less confined to match any particular Hellboy comic arc and decided to write an entirely original story, incorporating more fairy tale creatures and elements into the world. Many years ago, humanity had come to rule over much of the earth. However, the king of the elves, Balor, commissioned the construction of an undefeatable army, capable of waging war against humanity and winning. However, horrified by what he unleashed onto the world, Balor, much to the chagrin of his son, Nuada, decided to make a truce with the humans and lock away the Golden Army for good, breaking the crown that controls them into 3 pieces. Fast forward many centuries later, and our boy Hellboy is still fighting monsters like always. However, with his father gone and Myers shipped off to Alaska, Manning is largely in charge of what's going down at the BPRD, and even though he and Hellboy had somewhat of an understanding at the end of the first film, he's still a straight-laced, by-the-book square. However, Hellboy is taken with the idea of becoming a more public figure, not wanting to be relegated to working in shadowy alleyways and sewers anymore. And so, while on a job to take out some homicidal tooth fairies, Hellboy is pushed through a window by one of Liz's fire blasts and reveals himself and the other agents to the world. Meanwhile, the son of the Elf King Balor, Prince Nuada, plans on reassembling the crown and unleashing the dormant Golden Army upon humanity once again. Not wanting the destruction of human civilization to occur, Hellboy, along with Abe, Liz, and a new agent, Dr. Kraus, must stop Nuada and save the world. In the process, we learn that Liz is pregnant, Abe has fallen in love with the prince's sister, Nuala, and Hellboy nearly dies. However, when all is said and done, Nuada and Nuala are dead, Abe mourning the loss of his loved one, and the Golden Army no longer a threat. Hellboy, along with the rest of his friends, decide that the job isn't what it's cracked up to be, and they all quit. While in the first Hellboy film, Hellboy was torn between 2 fathers, in this film, he is the father. There are tons of symbols of fertility, pregnancy, and paternity in this film, from the goddess statues, the wall swelling, the big baby gone, and the child that Hellboy saves. But moreover, it's Hellboy trying to figure out what kind of world he wants to be a part of. Part of his reason for wanting to expose his existence is because he wants to be accepted by humans. I mean, after all, he stopped Lovecraftian creatures from destroying them in the last film, and he felt cared for and loved by his father, Liz, and Myers. Why wouldn't he want to be accepted by the public at large? But then, after coming out of the proverbial shadows, he realizes, well, a lot of people kind of suck.
Why don't I feel so good? I mean, I killed that thing. And for what? They didn't even like me. I mean, they're afraid of me. What do we do with that?
But then, when Hellboy learns about the other side, the world of the fairies, elves, and trolls, he feels a lot more accepted, since the creatures don't shoot him the same dirty looks that humans do. But then, at the same time, he's against the more misanthropic nature of Nuada and his crusade against humanity, the people that raised him. So it creates another odd push and pull in the narrative. Does Hellboy sacrifice humanity to feel more accepted, or does he still defend the Earth like his father wanted? Does he side with the BPRD or Nuada? Does he belong with humans or monsters? In the end, he learns that really the acceptance he wanted was with him all along.
Red, why are you with me? Do you need everyone to like you? Everybody? Or am I enough? Think about it.
From his romantic partner Liz and his brother Abe, his own little family. And being that there's about to be an additional 2 members to that family, Hellboy decides that all that crap he has to deal with, the fighting, the identity struggle, the constant reminder of his so-called destiny, it's not worth it. He quits. Humanity, monsters, why fight? As long as we're with the people we love and who love you right back, that's all that matters.
Listen, I'm not much of a problem solver, but I do know this much. If there's trouble, all us freaks have is each other.
I'm not taking orders from you, old man. I'm just drawing my own line in the sand.
Now, mind you, there was a lot of supplementary material that came out before and after Hellboy 1 and 2. In between Hellboy 1 and 2, we saw the release of 2 straight-to-home DVD releases of animated features, Hellboy Blood and Iron and Hellboy Sword of Storms, both of which were really good and had a lot of the actors reprising their roles, this time as voice actors, as well as the video game Hellboy the Science of Evil coming out after the Golden Army, 2 less than favorable reviews. However, I think it's fairly reasonable that a lot of people wanted a 3rd live-action Hellboy movie from Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro did plan on making a 3rd Hellboy film, conceptualized largely while also working on Pan's Labyrinth. Titled either Hellboy 3 or Hellboy and Sons, we're not entirely sure. While Hellboy 2 did really well, Del Toro was too busy working on other projects, such as The Hobbit, which he would leave in 2010 and leave to Peter Jackson, and Pacific Rim. Legendary Pictures was interested in producing the 3rd Hellboy movie if Del Toro's Pacific Rim sequel did well, but then Del Toro walked away from that too, and we all know how that turned out. However, Ron Perlman, being very enthusiastic about it, continued to believe in Del Toro's vision, going so far as to refuse to reprise the role as Hellboy unless Guillermo del Toro was involved. However, in recent years, he's come out and said that sadly, he believes Hellboy 3 is just never going to happen. Now, I would be remiss to not at least acknowledge the other 2 Hellboy films that came out in recent years. And while I would have loved another Guillermo del Toro Hellboy movie, fate, unfortunately, had other plans.
Don't talk shit about fate. She's a vindictive bitch.
Hellboy 2019, directed by Neil Marshall and starring David Harbour, sucked. Now, I don't like to harp on things. This channel was made with the express purpose of not to do so, but if we're going to compare the Del Toro Hellboy movies and Hellboy 2019, I gotta say it's like comparing a plate of prime rib, cooked asparagus, and mashed potatoes to a stale, old, half-eaten loaf of Wonder Bread. And before you say, I'd still eat that, I need you to stop and think. Are you saying that because you actually enjoy eating stale, white, cheap bread on a regular basis? Which, if you do, I'm sorry. Or are you just a contrarian? Yeah, that's what I thought. Punk ass. To summarize the plot, Hellboy has to stop this ancient blood queen from wiping out all of humanity while also embracing his heritage as being a descendant of King Arthur and wielding Excalibur, but then also trying to figure out who he is and where he belongs, and even if he wants to be a man and he has daddy issues and just... The characters are unlikable, they have no chemistry, the story isn't super coherent, and the main theme tries to mash the two Hellboy films' themes together in a way that just doesn't work. It feels childish. This film feels like some teenage boy in a drunken stupor read a ton of books on Arthurian legend, read the first 3 volumes of Hellboy, binge-watched the anime Blood Sea, and then went, "Watch out, Billy boy, see what I can do." David Harbour is probably the best part of this film, but even then, he kind of struggles. Perlman's Hellboy can be childish and immature, but exudes a kind of coolness and matter-of-fact nature that is really likable. And he has human moments too. His anger is largely demonstrated through his actions rather than his words.
Hey, Manning, I wish I could be more gracious, but...
While Harbour does try to emulate this, and sometimes too closely,
Gonna be sore in the morning.
Yeah, I don't want to feel that in the morning.
there are scenes where he tries to make the character his own, and David Harbour, when he's angry, largely just crashes out. And during those scenes, he's not acting like Hellboy, he's acting like a high school English teacher who's running on fumes.
If you, loved me, maybe you could talk to some of your human friends that would want to see me dead, rather than unleashing me to slaughter my brothers and sisters!
While the Hellboy comics do incorporate Arthurian legend, and the film worked with that a little bit, they leaned into it a bit too hard, I think. Overall, I didn't enjoy it. However, Hellboy, the Crooked Man, was decent. I think it's because it's a very faithful adaptation to the original comic book. Basically, the original comic is about Hellboy taking up a mission in an Appalachian town, only to discover the workings of witches and a demonic entity known as the Crooked Man. He and a local named Tom Farrell team up to put an end to the witches and the Crooked Man. They made some minor changes here and there in the film to the plot, such as Hellboy being on another mission but being derailed and adding in the character of Bobby Joe, but that didn't really impact the overall narrative, I think. I thought the character dynamics were pretty good, the story was solid, the setting was neat, being that a lot of Hellboy comics take place in things like castles, cities, and sewers. It was nice to see it out in nature, in mountains and forests. Jack Kesey was alright, not exactly Hellboy, but he was good enough. Overall, I think the film would have benefited from a bigger budget and some more promotion, but in the end, not terrible. It was fine. It wasn't a Del Toro Hellboy movie, but it was okay. And that is where we're left, folks, with 2 really amazing films, 1 awful film, and 1 okay movie. I won't lie to you folks, every time I watch the Del Toro Hellboy movies, I get a little sad afterward. While I and many others love to pick apart these films and understand what makes them unique and what makes them resonate with myself and others, there are sadly many people in the film industry that just don't. And I get it. You want to have your own vision, and you want to make your own iteration of the series and set it in a new direction. I can understand that. But I can't help but feel that they're missing something in the process. Heart. They see the Hellboy comics and go, oh, big action sequences and gothic architecture. We need that in spades. Look at this lore. We need to focus on that more. But in doing so, they lose anything special or anything that differentiates their films from the comics. If I want to read the comics, I will. I've read the first 3 volumes of it, and I loved it. But that's just scratching the surface. Story of my life. But what differentiates the Del Toro films from the other Hellboy movies was, well, Del Toro. He brought his own perspective and put his own soul into it. It doesn't matter that the movies aren't strictly based on anything in the comics. Del Toro saw something that he resonated with. How a demon, a freak, a monster could still do good in the world and be worthy of love and acceptance. There is a core emotional arc present throughout the Hellboy films that have nothing to do with the lore and fighting monsters. It's about figuring out who you are and where you belong, answering those most human questions of all. You know what my favorite scenes in the Hellboy films are? It's not the parts where Red's fighting hellhounds, killing Nazis, fighting trolls, elves, and robots, but the smaller parts. It's where he saves a woman's kittens and stops to pet them afterward. It's where he's having milk and cookies with a boy on a rooftop talking about women and relationships. It's where he and Abe are getting drunk and talking about their relationship woes while belting out Barry Manilow. It's where Hellboy tries to fight Dr. Krauss and loses miserably. Or when Red finds out he's going to be a father of twins. They're the small parts, but they make the Hellboy character more relatable to me than someone like Superman or Batman. This is where we see the big red demon guy that scares the bejesus out of white Baptist mothers is actually just like everyone else, and like everyone else, can find love and acceptance. None of the other Hellboy films really care or bother with this stuff. All they want to do is be the next Marvel movie or next Evil Dead. But I don't want another Marvel movie, and I don't want another Evil Dead movie. I want more of this, more of the heart, more of the humanity, more of the search for acceptance and finding your own little family of freaks. I want more Del Toro Hellboy movies. And it saddens me to think we probably will never get another film series like this ever again.
Now you know I can smile.